something. get to? Wells County Council.
Okay.
Let the meeting come to order. The first order of the business is we say the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll all stand, please. Todd, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you'd bow with me, please. Heavenly Father, thank you for a new year. Thank you that you've brought us through this past year of challenges. Just ask that you'd watch over us this coming year, give us wisdom and discernment as we conduct the county's business, and just bless our time together this evening, and let your will be done. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
We have Jim Oswald is not present, but he's present on the phone. So make note of that, please. First, we'd like to formally welcome Scott Elzey to the council, and congratulations on your election and being a member of the Wells County Council. First order of business is a little unusual since we don't have a current president. I, as vice president, will ask for nominations for president of the board for this coming year.
I would like to nominate Steve Huggins for president.
Second that.
We have a nomination and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, raise their right hand.
Yes.
All opposed? Okay. I'm going to move over to the next seat quick. Well, as soon as we do this. So we will need a vice president of the council. Do I hear a nomination for the vice president of the council?
I'll nominate Seth Wicker.
Okay, Seth has been nominated. Do I hear a second?
I will second
We
that.
have a nomination and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your right hand.
Yes.
Okay. 7-0.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's congratulations.
Do you want to second that? What's the question?
I can do
Okay, first order of business is approval of the minutes from our December 21st and the executive session on December 23rd. Did anyone have any questions or comments or changes that need to be made on those minutes? That being said, do I hear
Motion to approve
motion
the
to
minutes.
approve?
Second.
From Chuck, seconded by Vicky. All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed?
I will abstain.
Guys abstaining, you must not.
Jim, we just approved the minutes.
Yep.
Did you have any questions?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, next up, appointments. Sheriff Holiday, you're on the hot seat.
I thought you were gonna point me to something.
We can do that.
I got enough responsibilities. Good evening.
Evening.
I'll just be brief here. As of this afternoon, we have 66 inmates in jail. 21 are pretrial superior, 17 are pretrial circuit, 16 F6, 10 DOC. That's where we sit with our inmates. Also, I handed out 2 reports. We got the monthly report activity for December, and the end of the year revenue income generated for 2020. So, for both, they're hard to compare to last year. Usually we compare those to the previous year, and obviously with activity, COVID related most of the year, there's a lot of differences from the previous year. So nothing out of the ordinary though due to COVID. And revenue, obviously, gun permits, even though the 5-year gun permit is free, we over doubled our gun permit fee sales. I thought that was interesting. but that usually is pretty typical on an election year, so, a presidential election year. And the highest month being October, right before the election. So, just some observations, but, and then also by statute, I'm required to report commissary spending to the auditor biannually, so my January reporting is up, and that was distributed to you guys. So if there's any questions on that, just two notable things out of commissary. We had a decent balance. We just replaced 2 of our detective cars out of the commissary fund, so that was a welcome thing. We had the same 2 detective cars for about 7-8 years, so they were due. They were getting up there in mileage and needs of repair and everything else. So we went ahead and purchased not new but new used vehicles for the detectives. So those just came out here in December, which dropped the balance down on that. Which I thank you. Budget time, I asked that. I knew those things were coming out, and another note on that as well. If you remember the big transport van that I purchased when I first became sheriff, I think we're about 1 payment away from paying that off. So there was a good chunk that came out of commissary for that as well. So that's been a needed addition. It's been very well for us. Transport-wise, we have mass court day tomorrow, which I know there's 10 of them going in the afternoon. So in the old days, that would have took about 4 cars to get that many inmates up there, and we can get them all in the van. So it's been a good purchase for us. So other than that, unless anybody has any questions, I'm going to save the rest. I know on the agenda later, Amoresco and Alvadas is presenting, so I'll be around to help with any questions or concerns on that moving forward. So.
Is your commissary about the same as what it was before with COVID? I didn't know if that was affected a lot or.
Usually, obviously those are funds generated through various things through the inmates, but with our population being down, it hasn't affected it a whole lot.
That's good.
And part of that is, in addition, a couple of things that we did. We implemented a program called Chirp, which is a text messaging program for the inmates that they can utilize. There's a cost to that, which we didn't have before, that generates a portion of income to commissary. And another addition is we implemented external video visitation with the inmates. We always had internal, but we added external, which there's a fee for that, which it's only $4. So it's pretty cheap for been driving, especially for somebody driving outside of the county. They can meet with the inmate via their phone, computer, whatever it is, through video visitation in lieu of coming to the jail, which has helped with traffic at our jail. They can still do it for free if they come to the jail. We have 2 kiosks in the lobby, and that's free, but if they want to do it externally. So there's been a couple of revenue-generating things that were added to the facility last year in lieu of that, and that was right at the brink of when COVID started. So it kind of had to me, I believe, offset it and kind of kept it where it was at.
That's good.
So.
You just got to have one quick question.
Yep.
Just to refresh my memory, the payments from DOC, is that just an annual payment or
Yep.
semi-annual payment?
Nope,
Okay.
it's annual,
It's
and
still
in
that way,
2019, it did not reflect that number in there, because that was just a check that,
Is it supposed to be in the middle of the summer then typically?
yeah, it's been coming mid-year. So as you can see in August,
So we can kind of look that same way?
Yep.
Going into next year?
yeah, and that was, I believe it's the exact same payment that it was in 2019.
Okay, that's fine.
So I think they reevaluate that. The structure on how they do it is totally different than turning in the number of days. They go off history of how many we usually house, and that is for that's for F6 only.
Okay.
So the F6s, which used to go to prison, now get housed in the county jails. That $263,000 is just for F6s. DOC is the other months where you see $7,000 and $10,000, $12,000. Those are for the DOC billings that we get monthly. So we're kind of getting compensated 2 different ways in that factor. So, yep. You're welcome.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have the library updates, Kim, Dustin, and Sarah. If you would like to sit in too, you're welcome to. There's that chair up here.
Good evening. We appreciate the time to discuss what's going on at the library with you tonight, so we can better align our efforts with yours. I've just got 4 points that I wanted to cover fairly quickly. There's kind of surrounding some of the projects that we've had ongoing and some of the odd things that are happening at the library, odd in a good way. First and foremost, we have substantially completed the renovation project that has been going on. We stayed within our budget, but we spent almost every penny we could, as would be expected. We've got one more year for CME, who was the general contractors on the job, to address any issues that might arise. We're finding lights that don't work or aren't quite enough, so they're making those adjustments as they need to.
Were there any things through the process that you wish you would have done differently?
I can't say that there have been. Maybe I wish that some predecessors had done things differently. We did find that there are some humidity requirements in the building that have to do with warranties on the woodwork and casework that require better humidity control than we currently have. So there are plans within our operating budget for next year to address some of those issues. We took a humidification unit off of the main air handler with the thought that we could replace it in the future if we need to, and it would be nice to have that still. As far as the project went, we had no things that we wish we had done very differently.
Were you pleased with the work CME did?
Yeah, I was pretty happy
Okay.
with it. Yeah. The next item I wanted to discuss briefly was the election of new officers for the year. I have been elected president and am appointed by this body, obviously. Angie Smith is the vice president. Deb Johnson is the secretary. I believe she's appointed by Southern Wells, Bluffton Harrison, and then Robin Minier continues to be the treasurer. The next item is we had a financial audit by the State Board of Accounts covering the time period from January 1, 2017 to December 31, 2019. There were no flags that were raised. There were no concerns communicated by the auditor. So we're very happy with how well that went. He was very complimentary of both the completeness and the organization of the records that he needed to go through. So it was a good experience, I think. And the last item is just the adjustments that we've made with the COVID-19 pandemic. Obviously, we are following the County Board of Health directives, where whenever we're in the red zone, so to speak, we curtail some of our services. We reduce the hours. We have reduced capacity in the library during those times. We have a curbside pickup service available for individuals that want to just make reservations or reserve books, and they can come pick them up. We have changed up some of our programming. We've done a lot of it virtually. We've got 118 virtual programs that have been put out there on YouTube and have 36,000 views of those 118 programs. Our circulation of printed material is down, of course. We have less foot traffic in the library, both due to the comfort level of individuals and restrictions in capacity. However, our e-resources, e-books, and e-audiobooks circulation is up over 100% on both of those items. So we're still continuing to serve the people of Wells County to the best of our ability. We keep track of what we call them something. I can't think of the word right now. Reference, yes, thank you, sir. Reference questions, and these are where individuals come and ask for specific information or for specific assistance. We don't count where's the bathroom, and those requests or those questions, the number of them has remained constant, both pre-COVID and post-COVID. So we're still providing the same services, we're just doing it differently than we have in days gone by. those are the 4 points that I wanted to cover this evening. I'd like, if you've got any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. If there are requests that you would have, we would be happy to address those as well.
I'm just curious to know with COVID, how have you been able to deal with the kids' programs and things? I know when Sarah, when you were in, when we were discussing how many children show up after school or whatever. Has that been still been able to do that? Or is it been
Yeah, we still do have
Sure.
teens show up after school, not quite as many. They have to, I think it's because they have to keep their masks on the whole time, and they have to do that at school all day, and so they're finding other places. Now that it's getting colder, we might see more of them that are just like, oh well, I'll just keep my mask on. But they're trying to find creative ways to eat the whole time they were there,
Oh, yeah.
so they could follow them down. But,
I'm just curious how
yeah,
that's-
so yeah, we still have a lot of families in. It's been pretty busy the last 2 days. So I don't know if people's mindset is just, it's 2021 now, so let's all head back to where we were, but, yeah.
But I want to point out something, we've talked a lot about the different programs, and I think the staff has been phenomenal to try to think up creative ways, items that parents can take home instead of, if they don't feel comfortable coming in. Curbside, still very popular. I don't think we'll quit that, even if we get back to normal capacity, because some aren't gonna feel comfortable, whether they have disabilities or whatever. So I think that we, should commend them for trying to be as creative as possible during this, because it has been, a difficult challenge for many. And even young mothers, I think, Sarah was saying, continue to want to come up to do drive-up because they don't want to get their children out of the car. So there's a lot of things, I think, because of this, we will continue and maybe even expand upon.
Well, I'd like to say I've taken 2 tours, and I really appreciate the progress and the innovation you've put into your building, and I'm happy it's in Wells County.
And do you see, just when you're thinking about the whole COVID and reinventing the way you deliver services, that you'll continue some of the lessons learned, more virtual things, even ongoing into the future? Do you see a lot of good lessons that were learned there that you're going to continue to deliver? I know you mentioned the curbside stuff, but also on the virtual side.
We've seen, during quarantine, the virtual was just skyrocketing and being used a lot. Now that people are trying to get out and come in, it's maybe not used as much.
Okay.
So now we're trying to figure out what's actually worth the time of still creating that content versus views. But I think we'll still do, we've done some online book chats that people actually live view and interact with while it's going on. Those
Okay.
seem to do pretty well. We did a virtual story time. We actually had more parents prefer, before we went through when we were kind of at the tail end of the phasing before we went to the colors, we actually had physical story time. And we still had parents that just said they just prefer to be there physically. And thankfully, because of our space, the storytime room expanded, we were able to space everyone.
That's good.
But now that we're fluctuating between red, orange, we'll probably have to consider doing our story times virtual again. But
Okay. Good.
All right, anybody have any more comments or questions? If not, I think we had decided that we'd get these kind of updates semi-annually. So,
It really helps us as a council,
Yeah.
especially when
Just know what's going on.
financial situations come about. It's just nice to know. It keeps us up to speed.
Do you see any other financial expenditures coming up? I know you just got done with the renovations. Or anything else that you see coming up that's of significance?
I think just kind of figuring out the humidity with our HVAC system. But we have improvement reserve funds that won't be a
Okay.
problem. And then I think we did kind of like a building envelope type process where they do infrared scans to see where your energy is leaking out of your building, to try to deal with the HVAC issues as well. And so we're just kind of waiting for that result. We wanted the construction done in case things kind of shifted and
Yeah.
changed. And then once we get those results, we'll see what we need to take care of with that. Mostly it's probably seals around the
Windows and stuff like that. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, Thanks very much.
Yeah.
All right.
Appreciate
Yeah,
your
thank you
time
for coming.
and
Thank you.
Yep.
You're welcome to stick around, but don't feel obligated.
It's going to be riveting.
Okay, next up, from Baker Tilly, we have Brian.
Good evening.
Evening.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you, sir.
I believe the subject at hand is potential revenue sources and how we're going to make it the highway garage and potential other major revenue needs of the county. We're going to talk about that.
So what you have in front of you, and this is the first draft of this, and we may have many more revisions to this or changes, but just basically put together a couple of different bond scenarios, and then with each of those looked at a few different ways to fund those, the payment on those bonds. So I thought we could walk through that this evening. Stop me if you have questions, or we can take questions at the end. So what we looked at is scenario one is to get to $10 million of proceeds. So that we structured, assuming that we need to get to $10 million, with about half of that for the highway garage, about half of that for the jail renovation. So that's kind of the basis for that. Scenario two, we looked at, well, what if the limiting factor for that was staying below the referendum threshold, which is just over $16 million. That backs into a little bit over $15 million of proceeds. So if that jail renovation was a little bit more expensive, if you added a pod, if you will, or that would cover both of those costs. We assumed that these would be lease rental bonds, and because there is a debt limit that you have, the county's limited to about $11 million of general obligation bonds if it was a property tax bond issue, or even income tax backed bond, that would also count towards that debt limit. By going with the lease financing, that does not count towards your debt limit. It's outside of the debt limit. It's common, schools do it all the time. And it preserves your geo capacity. If there's something that comes up down the road, an emergency or something like that, you can get to that through a geo bond process a lot quicker. You can do it pretty quickly. It has some more flexibility.
Do you normally have to create a board for that?
So
Typically, I know Scott comes from the school corporation.
there'd be a building corporation typically. And that'd be the commissioners would create the building corporation. Really pretty standard. If you did decide to go with a smaller bond issue, 10 million or even less than that, the option to do it as a general obligation bond or to do it as a revenue bond without going through the lease process is an option. And so that's something that we could talk through and look at. One of the trade-offs of doing the lease financing is you cannot start making payments on it until you can actually use or occupy the facilities. So with the highway garage, if it's a totally brand new standalone facility, until that is completed, you really can't start making payments on it. The jail renovation piece of it, since it's a renovation and the existing jail would be there, we're likely to be able to do interim lease rental payments. Basically, since you have the existing facility, since you can still use that during construction, that would buy down the capitalized interest costs. What we show here is the assumption that it's fully capitalized. We don't have that buy down. That would just be, we could reduce these numbers. Just want to kind of show you the higher side.
Good.
And we've assumed in issuance in May of this year, that may be too fast, and we've capitalized through the January of 23 payment. So about 18 months of capitalized interest. Obviously, if that construction time period is shorter than that, we can reduce that capitalized interest period. But at this point in time, not knowing that construction timeline, that's the number that we went. We've assumed no debt service reserve because if it's either income taxes or property taxes or income tax with the property tax backup, we can get away with not having a reserve it was a tax increment financing type of a bond issue, we'd have to have a reserve. So that's good news there. And the remaining costs are what's associated with issuing bonds. Underwriter's discount, that's for the firm that would buy and market the bonds, and then the issuance costs as well. So to get $10 million, it's about $10.5 million bond issue under scenario 1. Scenario 2, it's, as I mentioned, kind of maxing out at that referendum threshold of just about $16 million. The next two schedules just shows an illustration of the amortization of the bonds. These rates are just an illustration. We wouldn't get the actual fixed rates until they actually sold the bonds. But with the rates where they're at right now, it really is. We've been saying it's historically low. We're still saying it's historically low rates. It's about 0.5% early at about 2.5% towards the end. And while the rate goes up over time, those would be fixed at the time we sell the bonds. It's not a variable rate. Just want to make sure everybody knows that. You can see those first three payments are capitalized, as I mentioned in the prior schedule. So for scenario 1, it's about a $700,000 a year debt service payment, or lease rental payment. For scenario 2, it's about a $1.1 million, just under that annual payment. And these are both structured based upon a 20-year amortization. If you wanted to go shorter than that, we could. Obviously, just increasing your payments. 20 years for a highway garage or a jail is typical. I mean, those are long-lived assets. It's not like it's a vehicle that you're putting 20 years out there. So that's very typical. So that's why we showed you that. On page 5, this shows if we did it as a property tax bond issue. So you put a new levy in place. So for the scenario 1, the $700,000 payment, it's about 4 cents tax rate increase per year. For the larger bond issue, it's about a 6-cent tax rate increase. So that's if you decided to do property taxes to make the payments. We turn to the next page, page 6. This just shows, what does that translate into for impacts for various levels of home ownership and then an acre of land and commercial. So under the first scenario, for your median house, about $127,000 assessed value, that's about $1 per month. Tax rate increase is what that'd be, about $13 per year for the first scenario. For the second scenario, it's about $1.66 a month, or about $20 per year. And then you can see we showed some lower valued homes as well as up to a $225,000 house. That's about $30 a year in property taxes increase, and about $2.50 a month increase under scenario 1, and that goes up to about $3.73 under the second scenario. For ag land, it's about 50 cents a year increase per acre under the first scenario, and about 77 cents a year increase under the second scenario. And then the final column that we showed is with $100,000 of commercial assessed value. That's about $40 per month, or $40 per year rather. Excuse me. Under scenario 1, and about $60 per year under the second scenario. One thing that I normally would say is if somebody's at the circuit breaker, they want to see this tax increase, but you guys, when I looked at it, I remembered from before when I was here, it's like, that's a low circuit breaker, and then I saw it again today, it's like, that's not a conversation we need to have. You have very few people that would be getting that circuit breaker. So most people would see that as an increase in their taxes.
So I appreciate you giving us these so we can get the relative values.
Right.
What the impact would be on citizens.
And I think it's good to kind of see both annually and kind of monthly.
Right.
Just kind of put them
See what the true cost is to the taxpayer or the homeowner. Yeah.
And if there's other, values or scenarios, if you want to see more expensive homes or different types of commercial properties, that's easy to calculate those for you. So that's kind of assuming that it was property tax backed. So the next schedule assumes what if you used income taxes to pay it instead of property taxes. And here we looked at the certified shares distribution for the county unit as the payment source. And this is based upon the 2021 numbers. So under that scenario, under scenario 1, you'd have about 400% coverage which is very strong. Under scenario 2, your coverage is about 250%, which is still extremely strong coverage. The question there would be is, do you have money within your budget to come out of income taxes to make the payments? So that would be a further conversation that we have to have. Or would you need to, you still have capacity to increase income taxes to make the payment. So one thing we did, so that's just kind of assuming, here's your current income tax dollars. We did take a look at the correctional facility local income tax that is available. It was added, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. And you could put a rate in place to help offset that cost specifically for that project. And so we went through that calculation under both of the different scenarios. And we even assumed, what if your income taxes go down some? What if that taxable income goes down, which is possible with the COVID situation. Now, this would not be able to pay for all of it because the part of it that is the highway garage would not fall into the capacity. So if you look kind of in the middle portion of it, we have the illustrative lease rental payments, $702,000 and then the $1,070,000. And under scenario 1, I just said, what if half of that is for the garage, and what if half of that's for the jail? You could pay for about, and then you also want to add in coverage on the bond issue. You could pay about $438,000 would come from this rate. It'd be a rate of 0.07%, so it's not a very high rate. That would leave about $350,000 that would be covering the garage facility to have to come out of the other income tax dollars, or we do another increase in income taxes elsewhere to raise that. And then under scenario 2, I assumed that with the added cost was really for the additional work for the jail, so really 2/3 of that was covered by this rate. That's a 14 or 0.14% rate, and then that would be about the same $350,000 or so. That would need to come from somewhere to pay for the garage. You can also use a portion of this rate and go to operating costs, but there is a limit on that. So it's 20% of the rate that you would put in place, and the max rate you can put in place is 0.2%. Based upon what we're seeing here with the numbers, you wouldn't need to get to the 0.2%. So there is a little bit of new money that could come out of this as well. Not a lot, just because the rate's not very high, but there is some that can come out of that.
If this was to be implemented, is it only during the time of the debt, or does it go back off again, or is this a permanent?
It would go off. It has a max term of 22,
Just to cover,
22 years, yeah. So
I knew legislation put this in, was it 2 or 3 years ago? And
yeah. Yeah, so for this one, it would go off. So it would be very, very specific for...
Just for this purpose?
For this purpose, correct. So then we also did show, what if you did put that new tax in place? What would that look like under both scenarios? So the median household income is about $60,000 for Wells County, so that's about a $40 per year under scenario 1 increase in taxes, about a $78 per year for scenario 2 increase in taxes. $125,000 taxable income, about $80 under scenario 1, about $165 under scenario 2. And once again, if you wanted to see different rates, we could show you that. The last 2 schedules are just really for your information. Page 10 just shows the debt limit calculation that I referenced early on. Shows how we get to that of about $11 million. And then page 11 shows there's a controlled project threshold, which if you do bonds under that amount, then you don't even get into petition or monstrance. It's pretty streamlined. And then the referendum threshold that I had mentioned as well. There'd also possibly be the ability to split these projects because there are 2 different facilities. So,
I was going to ask, on the financing side, can you split it, like if we were to use the extra income tax for the jail side, but then use property tax for the garage? you could do a combination thereof
You could totally do
to
that.
finance it.
Yeah.
Okay. Still be
And-
one bond, but it'd just be financed from two sources.
Well, we would probably, under that scenario, we would probably do two separate bonds.
Does that increase the cost significantly then?
Would for some of it. We could look at it if they're both really backed by property taxes. Then we may be able to do that, and then it's just we've got like Series A, Series B, and Series B is
Right.
further secured by the correction rate.
Okay.
So I think we could get,
Very interesting to see.
look at that.
Okay.
Both of the projects end up being $4.5 million each. You don't do the larger jail piece. We could look at them both as individual projects. Then we would fall underneath the first line here, which is the controlled project threshold.
Right.
And that could expedite the
Then you're,
process.
okay, all right.
Not sure what your timing is and how fast it needs to move, or So there are some different ways that we could look at it.
Okay,
But you don't have to go all one or all the other.
okay, good.
Yeah. Any questions?
I'm sure as we digest it, we'll have more questions. Anybody have any questions right now?
Nice to see the options.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to
I didn't
see
see
it,
that
and the way you
correction.
spelled it out was nice to see the impact on taxpayers.
Yeah. And if you wanted to look and say, well, let's not do correctional, what if we wanted to raise, do it all under an income tax, increasing your expenditure rate or something like that, we could look at that. The correctional's nice because it's truly, you got all that money.
Right.
Specifically for this purpose instead of part of.
Which is
the
clean.
county's part. It's
Yeah.
Very clean in that.
And that can be used for renovations as well, not just new construction.
Correct. It's related to, the correctional.
Just to that.
facility, yeah.
Okay. It's good.
Okay.
And then as more numbers become available, and we'll refine those and
Okay.
keep updating as we need to.
Well, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
I'll be here if you think of something.
Okay.
down the road.
Thank you, Ryan. Okay, next up, we have Mark Harbrandt and Corey Miller.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for having us. For the record, my name is Mark Gerlin. I'm the Senior County Executive with Amoresco, and with me tonight I have Brad Driver, who is our project developer, as well as Garen Evans, who is our Director of Engineering. And we wanted to come here tonight to give you an update from our last meeting and some of the progress that we made based on the conversations that we had. And so I'm going to start off by having Corey talk a little bit about the meeting that Brad and Corey had at the jail and some of the discussions to give you an update.
Okay, thank you.
So again, I'm Corey Miller with Elevatus Architecture, and as opposed to what Mark said, I did not get to sit down with Karen and Scott. That was Dave Scholl in our office, and sit with Brad and talk about the options we developed. So if you recall, what we talked about back in December was exploring different options for an addition to get the additional beds that Scott had mentioned in that meeting. So we went through these things with Scott and Karen. And really, the idea at this point was to get an order of magnitude. How big of an issue is this? What are the capacities? What are the secondary and tertiary effects to the facility when you make these changes? So at this point, they're conceptual level, and we're engaging with Wygate Construction in Fort Wayne, who's working on a number of jail projects throughout the state right now, to understand and to confirm some cost estimates. And with the holidays and vacation, you guys know how that went. We're still working on to get those numbers, but we anticipate in the next couple of weeks we'll have those. So to walk you through what the three scenarios are real quickly, what you see in the blue is the project we talked about last December, right? That's the renovation for intake, for evidence storage, conference room, visitation, and chapel, along with video arraignment and some support spaces there. As we looked at the addition, and what we were trying to do is we take this center core and extend out through there. We leave a space in the building for two purposes. One is there's exterior windows in these cells, we obviously don't want to block those, but also to give us a gateway for future expansion, for another expansion in the future if need be. What's also represented here in some colors, and we'll get to the other two options in a minute, but if you're familiar with the jail, this is the kitchen support area, and then laundry is in that little green space. So we looked at three versions, and really, as we go down this, part of this will be working with Scott and Karen and understanding projections and what kind of bed counts we need to really build the capacity you need for the future. Because this is a 20-year bond, as Brian just talked about. So how do you build in enough capacity so you don't have to do this again in 5 years? So we've got a 50-bed, a 75-bed, and a 100-bed addition to show you today, and some of the impact for those. So in this 50-bed scenario, the yellow is the housing. So we've got cells aligned on one side and a dorm here, central control, the addition will be there, and the pink or salmon color is the support space, including a indoor-outdoor rec, which would have a gate, so in good weather you can open it up and use it as outdoor rec. You could also use it for programming. But the rest of the space would be mechanical support for the addition, along with security, electronics, electrical, and mechanical, janitorial closet storage for bunks, or not bunks, for the mattresses and so forth. So really, that's the way a 50-bed addition would work. When we talked to our kitchen consultant, and he walked through with Scott and Dave to look at the laundry and the kitchen, at a 50-bed addition, what is here will work. So we don't do any major renovations to the kitchen or the laundry at that point. But that's about the limit. So if you go to 75 beds, which is the next phase, you'll see the addition gets bigger. The beauty of this is we get a few more classifications, and Scott can talk about those if we need to. But this one has a few more classifications, has 2 rec and outdoor programming spaces. Again, that support space of programming, mechanical, electrical. This one would include a laundry out in the addition because there's not enough capacity here. And that laundry then, the relocation would then accommodate the additional in-dig property that's needed with this growth. This one at 75 beds would probably involve all of this pink area in a major kitchen renovation. So that is pretty much gutting it, and part of the overall project cost we'll have to do if we look at that level would be the catering aspect, bringing food in. You won't be cooking it in the jail for probably a good 6 to 8 months. But also, obviously, all the equipment to rework of that space. Make sure I'm missing anything on this here.
Hey, Scott, can you remind us how many beds we have out there now?
Currently, we have 94.
94.
And then the last one we did is 100 beds. So just flip to that one real quick. Same scenario with kitchen and laundry. So those need to be reworked or relocated to expand, and obviously expand for inmate property storage as well. And this one has 100 beds in a mix of dorm and cells. Again, 2 rec spaces, program spaces, and the support at the addition there. So we try to keep again, going back to the beginning, try to keep the same parameters in all 3. So the addition's still there, the future addition is still there, and trying to accommodate that growth in that secondary tertiary aspects.
Scott, also, what was our pre-COVID high as far as
When I became
census?
sheriff, we were in the 130s, 120 for a little while. That was for about a 3-4 month stretch right after I got elected. Typically, our average, it shows on the sheet last year for 2019 what the average inmate population I think was 90 in 2019. So, but we haven't dove into it too much. We were going to try and go back and look at some history numbers. Problem is, we used to house DOC like 25 to 30 for you longer-term ones that have been around. So we'd have to extrapolate out some of those numbers. We used to house them just for the income because we had the space back then. Obviously we back then tried to keep the jail full. But yeah, I've been trying to toy with what is a good number. Right now, I'm landing on the 75 is a good number, but obviously it requires you to do additional work, because as we said before, there's a trickle-down effect here that, the bigger you go, then, the kitchen wasn't built for that many people and the laundry and so forth, which Corey's talking about, but, you know, and just I reminded the commissioners yesterday, usually having male and female inmates, a good rule of thumb is to properly classify inmates, you know, minimum, maximum, medium security for both males and females, because we don't house them together, obviously, is to run at 80% of your capacity. So you throw a 50-bed jail in there, you're up in your number to what, 144. 80% of that's still in the 130s, low 130s, I think, if I remember correctly off the top of my head. So 75-bed jail gives you 169 beds, and that puts you at 80% capacity is like 144, somewhere in that range. So, you know, I'm trying to look forward is we've been operating with this jail for 35 years, and obviously we went from one number to where we are now, and so how do you extrapolate out the increase and then look forward and project 20 to 25 years ahead, so we're not, like he says, we're not adding a 50-bed, addition on, and then in 5 years we need more.
Right.
So.
Another question, I know, not comparing apples to oranges, but Adams County, what's their bed count in the new jail, do you know?
You guys know that?
Yeah, we did. It's right around I think it's around 200 if you include the work release.
That's what I had in my head.
That's what they total have in total?
Yeah, they've got, I think, 32 beds in work release, which is a little less secure addition on the edge. So the housing pod is about 175.
So what you're saying, Sheriff, is because some of the changes in the way that you're housing the numbers to look back 20 years ago to now and do a growth rate, it's pretty hard to do to extrapolate then what the future need might be.
But there's other contributing factors in there. We didn't house F6s
Right.
4 years ago. We didn't, there were certain things that have increased back onto the county level. And that's why you have so many jails in the state either renovating or building new jails right now. Mostly is because of the housing of F6s, prison overpopulation. When they did the law reform and they put it back on the individual counties, all our populations increased.
That and the new pre-trial, is it Rule 26?
21.
21?
Yeah,
That's new in the last couple of years.
So, and, obviously, we're still operating under the misdemeanors with the exception of, a handful of misdemeanor crimes are getting summons in court still currently, which we started in March and have not changed from that. So, we do have some misdemeanor warrants that get served and those type of things, but fresh arrests are usually getting summons in court right now. So that's helping keep the numbers low.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
The nice thing too with this is they're building this on the north side of the building, which is typically our outdoor rec area, which is underutilized just due to many factors, weather, staffing, and other things. So this addition, Adams County does have the same indoor-outdoor rec thing that they're talking about. That's built into their new jail, and that qualifies as a rec. It lets fresh air in and allows them to see the sky and it's not outside, but it allows them to. It's kind of like Lucas Oil Stadium when they open the roof kind of thing and let the wind in, so to speak. So it's that is a nice addition to where the staffing necessarily wouldn't have to. It is a feat to get a block and pods of people outside for rec time. So.
I got one more. What would we have to increase staffing for every 50 or for every 75 addition?
Yeah, there would obviously have to, this would affect staffing too. That's the other trickle down part, but we haven't looked at that portion of it yet.
Which would be an annual increase.
Yeah, I'd like to know those.
Yep.
That maybe next meeting possible.
Well, if you remember, we're still working on the numbers from the study they did 10 years ago, where you guys have added jailers to our facility because the study showed we were understaffed compared to the number of inmates. So I'll try to contact the ISA. They have Bill Wilson, who is their jail guy, and see if he has a formula or something that they look at for that to help, get kind of a guesstimate on what it would require as far as additional jailers. So.
because you would be able to spread out more, would you utilize a new area and maybe just stretch out people more? Would you be able to do some maintenance on, I mean, I guess I'm thinking, say your numbers stay where they're at, but you did get an increase of square footage. Would you try to kind of utilize the new area maybe, and maybe do a little bit of
Yeah,
improvements
it
to
would
the?
definitely allow us to rotate, to disinfect cell blocks, to, you know, if we have to do, you know, separate certain people within that. I mean, currently, right now, what we had to do with CARES Act money is we turned 2 blocks into quarantine blocks, but those can go back to regular blocks. But, you know, I don't plan on changing what we did to those 2 blocks. But, yeah, you have a lot more option there. And it's more centralized, like moving the laundry and the property from way up by the intake area where the green box is, to put that in where the salmon colored stuff is more centralized. It's more right there where all the inmates are, less travel. All those things would definitely play a part in. The bottom right blue would be the video arraignment area, which I didn't bring up earlier. We're meeting with the judges on Friday. That's a go. We're just trying to finalize the details on that so we can get moving on that. But that would be utilized, which is all right there, kind of centralized for all the inmates to do video arraignment for both courts. So there's definitely some pluses there.
So basically, to go to the larger number of cells, basically the kitchen area square footage wouldn't really change, it just have to be renovated, right?
It would.
It would change. I mean, all these
Square foot
support spaces around it, it would get completely reworked.
But I mean, it isn't being enlarged from where the 50 bed was, okay. I was
Yeah,
looking, I was
there's-
trying to remember the picture you
Yeah,
had.
the bottom and the right side, those square boxes around the bigger box,
Okay.
those are
That's
either
More square
offices
footage area.
or like the maintenance office, the jail commander's office is one of those. So those have the potential to basically blow those walls out to make the kitchen bigger, a little bit bigger, and accommodate the higher stuff there as far as.
And you might get there, but I guess at the end, what is the cost difference anywhere from 50 to 75? I'm sure it's not dollar for dollar, obviously, but
No, I mean,
approximately.
well, we'll get to that when we get the numbers from Mark Gann.
Okay, sure.
But you'll see, I mean, if we start segregating the addition, obviously there'll be 2 numbers for this.
Yeah.
And then a renovation of the kitchen.
For that,
and add on
right,
top of that.
exactly.
Okay.
Well done.
Just wait for the numbers, don't we?
Yeah.
Everybody is.
That's the big question.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
I guess we have a couple of commissioners here. From you guys' standpoint, what's your goal as far as this expansion? Align with Scott, that this thing needs to be, we're gonna do it, it's gotta last for 20, 25, 30 years?
Well,
What
I'm
you
kind
guys
of
talk
like you,
about?
just, I'll speak out loud, get my foot in my mouth. But, I'd like to see the numbers first. You know, out of the gate, we were talking just the COVID stuff and all this. You know, we added the 50 to 75, some of the stuff from the 100, what are options, lay it out per inmate, all these numbers. You know, you guys are gonna have to make a tough call.
Right.
Yeah, for us, I think, I won't speak for Kevin, but, you know, my motto's always been do it once and do it right, but I don't know what the state's gonna send down to the locals to make you guys and us all work within their framework. So, it's kind of a guess right now, but I would like to definitely see the numbers before, like I say, I'm willing to commit to the 50 or the 75.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
No.
Rein it in and get us by, and then, you know, make a decision in 5 years we're doing it. the size or whatever, I don't know, but I wanna see the numbers.
It's really hard to make these decisions because we don't know what legislators do and such. So we'll try to make our best decisions.
Yeah, we've always asked for home rule, but, you know, when it's all said and done, a lot of times it doesn't happen that way.
What I see happening over all the years of serving, and as Scott alluded to, and going back, you know, sheriffs long ago, watching it increase, female inmates increasing, correct? The mental health issues, all these things going in. I concur with what Blake has said and what you as a council are looking into. I think that, as they say, you build it and they'll come. I think the future of housing inmates is only going to grow. I think we've been very fortunate to go through 35 years of what we've had. Done a nice job along the way with some renovation and updates, and Scott's kept it going really well. But yeah, I think once you see the numbers, you know, that'll make it like you guys will know exactly what needs to be done, and we'll support you in any way we can. I think Brian alluded to the fact, you know, maybe a couple different bond issues type of thing. Spoke with a good friend of mine who I value his opinion up in Noble County today, and he even suggested, based on what we were looking at, and we were guesstimating our numbers, and he even suggested, as they've done a large project up there in Albion, possibly doing 2 different types of bonds on the project because of the amount of money you have in a highway barn versus the jail. And I put a lot of trust in this guy. He's pretty sharp. So,
Sheriff, what are the options? Does Wells County have to keep their inmates in Wells County? I mean, if all these other counties are expanding their jail capacities, can we send overcapacity out somewhere else?
It'll
I
cost
mean,
you.
what's our options?
A lot of sheriffs work together. I mean, I've been in situations just on a small scale with females before because I'm limited to how many I can house in Adams County. The sheriff over there has housed a few females for me. You know, we work together pretty good. But if I got, you got some jails like Wabash County has inmates in I think 4 different jails. So if I remember correctly, they're working on a project to either build a new jail or expand, if I remember correctly. But I know the sheriff over there, and he's got them all over the place, but they have to pay. You know, if I call Dan Mayo over in Adams County and say, hey, can you hold 2 females for me for a couple of weeks, he's not going to charge me a dime because we all help each other out a little bit. But if I say, can you house 30 or 40 inmates for me, that's a cost. There's a cost. Food, housing, all the things that go along with it. So a lot of sheriffs will do MOUs or whatever, and then it's just like us billing DOC for housing DOC. So, but
I understand there's a cost, but there's big cost to put in 75
I think the key
permanent
was
beds as well. So, I mean, can we look at all the options here?
Yep.
I would have to think availability is something you have to be careful of, because if they're
Getting
full,
full,
But there's a whole other thing. I mean, to me, the easy thing for me when I housed 4 females over there a couple months ago was they were all sentenced. I didn't have to go get them. I didn't have to bring them back for court. I didn't have other outlying things. I knew that they would go over there, and either when I was ready or they were done with their sentence, I could get them and be done. You put, like Wabash County, there's a cost associated, but it's a logistical nightmare when you got 60 inmates spread out over, it's not like he can put them in surrounding counties. Some jails built right now for the future, and then they do have a little bit extra space, so they can take 20 here, and then maybe 6 counties away they got other ones, and then these people have court, everything else, so that they're constantly having to go to these counties, pick these inmates up, come back, take them to court, take them all, so it does create a whole bunch of extra work and staffing and everything else to be able to deal with that. So, because they ain't gonna bring them here for court for us. So,
A quick question for you: how is your kitchen and laundry area now? I mean, they're sufficient. Are they outdated? Are they,
to me, we just replaced one of the washing machines actually just a month or two ago. So our equipment's good. It's just the square footage area. That little blue box
Yeah,
is a very
right.
small room. If you've
Yeah.
been out there to see the laundry area, it is very small. Our kitchen, obviously, I switched that over to contracted
Yes.
kitchen, if you remember. So, but
Right.
they do use our facility to cook the food. So, but that is contracted. So that's something that we'd have to, obviously, if we did or started some kind of construction, we're going to have to look at how are we going to continue to serve 3 meals a day when our kitchen's being renovated. So, I'm sure I can work with the company. I will, as well as Corey, I will do my best to get numbers that will help you guys make sound decisions on how to move forward, especially with the numbers, the inmates, the increase, all those things. So I'll work hard on that as far as getting all those numbers for you guys. So
Yeah, and the timing as well.
yep.
Steve, if I could just add one more comment. So we, as being on the state board, county commissioners, Mark Harebrant, myself, there was a period of time, a couple years ago, and the word was getting out of regional jails. You know, who wants to house the regional jail, right? Well, somebody wants to make money, but I don't want to house a regional jail. And if we're sending them out, it's going to cost us a lot of money. And I think it kind of got poo-pooed, didn't it, Mark? Real quick, like.
Yeah.
But somebody had this, yeah, bright idea. That might be the way to do it, but I don't think when it all worked out, it was not a way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know the Sheriff's Association was against it. And what they were for, though, was having maybe a regional facilities for the mental
Right.
health issues with
Right.
inmates, that
Right.
we regionally house them. That way they can get the treatment
To help.
and the care, and it's more specialized to their needs, to where we're forced to deal with that in the jails now. So a lot more than we did in the past.
It's a tough one.
Right.
Yeah. I'd agree with Blake, though, that if we're going to do it, we want to do it right.
Yep.
And a big part of that is, like you said, knowing what the numbers look like. But I don't want to pick our heads up and spend all the money for renovation and go 5 years from now, oh, great, now we got to do the expansion and we got to do another bond and we got to go through the whole process again because we didn't look ahead to do it right to begin with. So,
Well, this wasn't my intention, obviously. I'm not for a new jail, but, you know, I didn't get the luxury like Adams County, and Dan got to walk into a brand new jail as sheriff, but, you know, that
Yeah.
doesn't always mean success. There's still issues when it comes to running a jail, and you know, we have to look at that liability-wise and everything else of what we're dealing with inmates. And unfortunately, as this thing grew, and I told the commissioners, all COVID did was recede the waters and expose all the rocks. And to me, I started small. I was looking at a renovation with some CARES Act money, and then the more and more we got into it, it's just like, yeah, why do this now? Because we're just going to come back in 5 years, and you know, when we go back to normal, we're gonna be right back to what we've been battling for years. As long as I've been, you know, good the last 10 years, we've been operating at capacity. You know, and there's a lot of dangers that come with that. So we really want to be able to. I want to look forward. I'm not going to be here in 10, you know, 20 years working there. So I want to make sure that this community and the ones that run it after me are set. So yeah, there's a cost and a whole bunch of crap that goes with it, but I think now's the time to do it. If we're going to do it, let's do it right. So.
yeah.
I just wanted to state real quick that I've been with Amoresco for 22 years, and I have never seen more jails in the state of Indiana being built, whether it's I've sat on the Indiana Association of County Commissioners Board for several years, and when I went to the district conference 2 years ago, I asked everybody in that room in our district areas that we cover, how many of you are renovating, looking at the possibility of building on or building a new jail right now? Every single county raised their hand. Every one of them. What you guys are looking at right now is what a lot of people are already doing and looking, because of what House Bill 1006 did when they shifted all those level 6 inmates to the county level. And now we're having to deal with things that we never thought we'd deal with, like mental health issues and substance abuse. Now and theft. We're having to take all those inmates now it's overcrowding these jails right now, and it's unfortunate because, you know, as a county commissioner and going across the state and seeing what's going on, it's frustrating to me because when a sheriff comes to a county commissioner or a council and says, hey, I'm overcrowded, this person just got jumped on because I don't have enough staff, and it's putting my people in a serious safety issue right now because I'm understaffed. You know, the knee-jerk reaction is well, we got to put more beds in. And so it's just frustrating, very frustrating, because that was just thrown on everybody's lap.
So the state prisons seen their populations going down because of this, or is it that they were?
Absolutely.
So that's what the state's end goal is to put it back on.
It was a shift.
Yeah.
It was a shift.
I figured
All
that.
of
With no money.
Yeah,
Right, exactly. That's what I mean.
That's
That
right.
state just saved a lot of money by doing it, by putting it down on the
Correct me if I'm
counties to
wrong,
deal
their
with.
numbers are skewed as far as the
Yes.
capacity from before because they've closed some of their prisons. now.
Yes.
Oh, so now,
So they would, that number of capacity would be a lot lower if you counted what
The jails they
how many
closed.
beds they used to have
Right.
because of the prisons. So I get it. You know,
Okay.
they had to do something, but you know how it
Put the burden on
works.
us.
Yeah, it trickles down to the local level, and you know we're the ones that end up having to deal with it. So
okay. Well, thank
yeah,
you.
I don't see them anytime soon saying we'll take them back.
Not if they're closing the jails down, that they just emptied. They're not going to take them back. Yeah.
But I agree with Mark. The level 6 offenses that usually fall within that are a lot of things that are forcing us to deal with a whole new level of inmate. You know, whether it be substance abuse and drug abuse and the things that normally would go on prisoners are now we get to deal with them. And then throw COVID in there, we don't get to do much programming because obviously we don't want to get in our jail or have people running in and out of our jail all the time. So.
Yeah.
Or we could be like Kentucky, where the sheriff doesn't run the jail. I mean, yeah, they have an elected jailer. Yeah,
I'd rather have the sheriff do it.
moved to the wrong state.
I was going to say, I'd rather have the sheriff do that than an elected official. No offense, elected officials.
Okay, does anybody have any more questions for these guys?
We're good.
Yeah,
At
thank you
this
so
point in
much.
time,
Get some numbers.
thanks,
Much
guys,
appreciated.
for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Okay, moving on to miscellaneous business, we had the 2021 solid waste salary contract. Just this approval of that contract.
Everything's the same.
It's the
just
same
the-
every
It's the
year.
same.
Everybody has seen
This
this.
is, okay,
Do we do a motion for that?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Motion by Vic, second by Seth.
Mhm.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Okay. Yes,
Aye.
7-0.
You're doing good,
Glad you're
Jim.
still there, Jim.
You're doing good.
You're still hanging in there.
Next order of business is our annual appointments. I believe we have the list in front of you. Council appointments, starting with alcoholic beverage, Tony Garden, area plan, Jerome Markley, Huntington City Town Public Library, Daryl Schrott, Property Tax Board of Appeals, Judy Appleworth. All those people, I believe, are willing to serve another term. Then we have our council members on various assignments. Is there anyone that's not willing to serve in an appointment that they are already on?
As I say, I'm good with what I'm doing. I just to remind you, I'm a proxy for you on the EMA or
Yeah.
EMA, so just.
Okay, for the,
Yeah, so it's a case where, yeah,
Okay.
so it's.
And I'm good with Bluffton now just took it over the first year. So I'm
Vicky,
okay
you're
with
on
that.
Chamber, Commerce,
I'm sorry, EMS board, my apologies.
and the trails.
Yeah,
You're good with continuing on?
I am.
And Chuck, solid waste?
I appreciate being on solid waste, yes.
Okay. And I'm on economic development. I'm fine with that. we could take these all as one motion. If someone wants to make a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Chuck, all in favor, raise your right hand.
Yes.
Yes, Jim? Okay, 7-0.
We figured your hand was raised, we just couldn't see it, Jim.
And then I believe we have an encumbrance summary. There's nothing we need to do at this time. Just more for your information on the carryover payments from the budget.
Am I seeing it, $146,000 is what we're carrying back over? Is that the total?
That's what's going back into the general.
Mm-hmm.
Not bad.
Okay.
No, not bad at all.
Any questions on that? Does anybody else have any business to file? Okay.
One other question, I assume this list here totals that number, right? That was something.
Anybody else? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Seconded.
All in favor, raise your right hand.
All right.
All right.
Good job, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Don't run away. There we go.
Hey, what's the weather like?
Just one signature.
Yeah, stick around for a couple signatures. We have the solid
Is your
waste.
weather gloomy and cold? Because that's how ours is.